Connor McDavid should be suspended. It's time to get the squad together.
You are Talking Puck with the NHL Squad Show, sponsored by Game Time. From the Oilers to the Stars, Golden Knights, and the Panthers, the Rangers, Avalanche, and yes, even the Maple Leafs. The Locked On Podcast Network brings together all its local experts to provide the scoops, breakdowns, and comprehensive looks at all the NHL, with plenty of trash talk to go with it. Don't miss the hard hits and glove-dropping hot takes on the Locked On NHL Squad Show. It's time to drop the puck.
Welcome to the NHL Squad. Sit back, grab your favorite beverage, and join us as we get you ready for another wild week across the National Hockey League. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. I am joined today by Jay Forster of Locked On Blue Jackets, Josh Sperber of Locked On Lightning, and the Mondo Man, Armando Velez of Locked On Florida Panthers. And gentlemen, the big story right now, will the NHL actually suspend its biggest star, Connor McDavid? Jay, let's start with you. Does he deserve a suspension, A? And B, will they actually suspend him?
I think he absolutely deserves a suspension. I will be floored if they actually do suspend him, is the thing. Like, stars get more leeway with this kind of thing. And it kind of goes hand in hand with, I see a lot of people saying that he was, 100% within his rights to do this because he gets mauled basically every game. And, it's the same thing we saw with Sidney Crosby back in the day of just slashing and whacking and hitting him because he's the best player on the team, and the idea that because I think a lot of hockey people never learned that two wrongs don't make a right is kind of what this all boils down to. So I think he absolutely should be suspended. He cross-checked a dude in the face. Was it was there precedent for it? Was he acting upon something that happened to him? He was, not self-defense, but, it was a reactionary cross-check. He didn't just decide to go out there and cross-check the dude in the face, but he still did very much cross-check a dude in the face. And sometimes you got to sit in timeout for that. But I will be shocked if the NHL actually suspends McDavid.
Josh, what do you think?
I mean, just looking at the play, he was kind of dragged to the ground at an important time of the game. Like, I'm not saying he didn't do anything violent because there was definitely some violent intention there. But after the hit, it kind of looked like the defender linked around him and kept him on the ground as McDavid was trying to get up in the dying seconds of a game where McDavid's team was down by 1 goal. So again, like you said, Jay, I mean, he definitely did something wrong. There's no debating that. But I don't think it deserves a suspension because it was kind of instigated by someone else. And I don't think that this late, I guess it was Myers, the defenseman, who was holding him. But I just don't see them handing out a suspension for that. I mean, if you really look at that play, he still did something bad, but he was kind of taken out of the game in a legal way. So I think it'll just be a hefty fine for both of them, and I'm okay with that. But even still, a hefty fine, I still don't think is enough to stop something like this. But it's not like McDavid has a history of doing this. It's not like it's not like he does this every single year. So I don't know.
Did elbow a dude in the face 2 days previously, though. In fairness, he did very much elbow a dude in the face in the previous game. So, not that I'm not saying McDavid is a dirty player here.
Yeah,
but
that's what I mean. He's had some dirty moments, but overall, he's not a dirty player. It's not like this is a regular occurrence for him. I just don't know if it's worth a suspension.
Does it bother you, though, Josh, that, you said a hefty fine, the maximum fine is something like $5,000, which to Connor McDavid is like a trip to Burger King for everybody else. It's like a $20 fine for the average person. I mean, I would say that's not much of a deterrent to fine a guy making as much money as Connor McDavid, $5,000. Should the league, up the structure of fines, I know that's negotiated with the NHLPA, but it seems to me like these fines are nothing more than a very minor slap on the wrist, especially for star players.
Yeah, and it's crazy because we even see something like that happen with like someone like Nazem Kadri in the playoffs when he was with the Maple Leafs just a few years ago, and even with this is something that Jeff Merrick also talks about, how the general managers want the suspensions and the criteria for suspensions to go down, and so that's why we have this system that we have now for the NHL. But let's not forget, in the postseason, when these two teams met, there was that cross check to the face that Carson Soucy had of McDavid when he was falling over. So you're thinking, if the roles were flipped, you want the same thing for this. So after not getting anything for the elbow a few days ago against Minnesota Wild, you want, maybe this could be something of a makeup from the NHL.
Now, here's the other thing. Like, I'm torn. So, on the one hand, if you're going to enforce the rules should be the same, in my mind, for, Connor McDavid and, some fourth line guy on the other team who is making the league minimum, because you need a standard and you want to uphold that standard. But at the same time, the NHL is a business. They're in the business of entertainment. People pay money, especially if the Oilers are on the road. They're only making one trip to Tampa Bay or to Columbus or to Florida each year. And people buy those tickets as soon as the schedule comes out because they want to take their kids to see Connor McDavid, and they want to see Connor McDavid. So if you suspend Joe Blow, only, a few people care. You suspend Connor McDavid, people don't get to see the guy they want to go see.
I understand that, but this could just be me not watching as much hockey as you guys do, but the last hit that I remember, should they suspend him, should they not suspend him, was, Armando, you'll remember this, that Nikita Kucherov hit on Tkachuk that happened, last month? Mm-hmm. Could be the same kind of reasoning that you mentioned, that Kuch was not suspended that next game. That, I thought, honestly, was a much dirtier hit than what McDavid did, because Kuch was just settling some old scores. We can go all the way back to, 02 or 22, where what Kuch was making up for, a lot of people say. There's a lot of history there. Not as much, I think, maybe more recent, but not as much history, I think, with McDavid and the Canucks. And it did not seem at all that Kucherov was going to get suspended for that hit. And if he didn't get taken a game for that, I don't think McDavid should get suspended for this. Again, yes, he hit the guy, but I think Tyler Myers, if any of the two guys, should get hit with a heftier punishment, because after the hit, Myers retaliated by dragging him down during, an important time of the game, not letting him get up, just basically impeding his play. And then what else is McDavid going to do but try and push him off you?
I also think, sorry to interrupt you, but I also think that because there was 2 seconds left on the clock before when it happened, you're not feeling the consequence with a game misconduct there. The game's up for the most part over. So I think the timing of it has a lot to do with why he could eventually be suspended.
That's
I think
true.
Also, sorry, go ahead, Josh.
No. I'm just it happened that late in the game. Kucherov's hit happened in the first period, I think. So that that's a full game anyway, even if Kuch already scored before the hit. But no, I think in this case, the fact that it's the end of the game, that makes the suspension a bit more likely. Just, I don't know. It just was, to me, it seemed like tensions flaring, tempers rising a bit too high during a heated game situation. And, that kind of fire, I think, is good for the league. But obviously, when it, turns this ugly, maybe not so much.
I think something that has bothered me for a long time about this, and, you talk about the Kucherov hit on Tkachuk. Tkachuk returned to the game, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
The next period.
If Tkachuk doesn't finish the game and, he's done for the season, then I think Kucherov absolutely gets suspended, because this league and DOP specifically is so reactionary. They punish injury over intent. I feel like, and we're kind of seeing a similar thing with Gil, your guy. I'm going to butcher his name. I'm so sorry. Sipaklov.
Yeah.
Who it was called not a penalty on the night, or it was called a penalty, then it was reviewed to not be a penalty, and then he gets 3 games about it because, and I do think that if Ryan Poehling is not put on IR, I don't think he gets suspended. You know, I think if Connor Garland is, you know, lying face down on the ice, bleeding profusely after McDavid cross-checks him and, you know, it'll help stretch it off the ice or whatever, then McDavid probably does get a longer suspension. But I think the fact that Garland stayed in the game for, you know, the 2 whole seconds or whatever it was and continued to cause chaos after being cross-checked, I think is probably going to lead to less punishment for McDavid because, and like, I have no real scientific like way to back this up. It seems to me that suspensions are tougher if the player is injured and they don't punish intent over.
I think the league,
they punish impact over intent, which I don't think is the way to do it.
I agree with you, and I don't think the league has a consistent logic to the way they handle these things, unfortunately, and it leaves us with all of these debates because the left hand often in this league doesn't know what the right hand is doing. All right, we've got a lot more to discuss coming up. All 4 of our teams are in this wild card race in the Eastern Conference, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, the Vancouver Canucks, are they ever going to make a trade? We'll got all that and more coming up on today's NHL Squadcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Select Quote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Stanley Cup. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from Select Quote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. Select Quote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets Select Quote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage of up to $5 million with no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. Select Quote, they shop, you save. So let's talk a little bit about this wild card race in the Eastern Conference. All of our teams are somewhere in that fight, although Armando, your team is a little bit above that level right now. But, it seems like the Eastern Conference is both top heavy and bottom heavy. Less than 10 points separate the 2 wild card teams from last place in the conference. How do you guys think this will affect the trade deadline? And how do you think this reflects on the league?
I don't think we're going to see. I don't think we're going to see as many early trades in like early February for the league, especially with 4 nations. I think that some teams that are selling that might have some players in the 4 nations might want to maybe showcase them more to maybe up their stock. If anything falls out for them. I mean, it's crazy because the 2 of the greatest stories in the NHL right now are teams like the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Montreal Canadiens, of what's going on there. And then what's going to happen with the likes of like a Jake Evans in Montreal. Do they stick with their plan, kind of like what the Philadelphia Flyers did last year, even though they were fighting for a wild card spot? The Capitals sold at the deadline last year and still found a way to make it to the top 3 in the Metropolitan Division. So it's a mix of like what front offices their agendas still are for what they want to build, do, and it's about really taking a a macro view of each individual team and saying, is this a team that can compete in the postseason for them? I mean, and a team like Ottawa, they're not in the same situation as Columbus and Montreal. They are trying to make the postseason. They have to try to prove to their fan base that this is something that can be sustainable. They wouldn't have traded for Linus Ullmark if that was the case for them. So that's a little bit of like my thoughts on the trade deadline as far as the wild card race in the Eastern Conference, at least from my perspective.
Do you think Four Nations is viewed by general managers as a chance to showcase guys, or do you think they say, "Oh no, I'm not going to risk my possible trade prospect getting injured in an exhibition, and then I lose him for no value at all"?
Yeah, 100%. They are crossing their fingers that no one gets injured at this competition, I guess, this tournament. I don't know off the top of my head how many of the guys that are named to the 4 teams are actually going to be in the deadline mix. Like if there are any pending UFAs or like RFAs that are likely to move. But my guess is that GMs are just going to kind of like cross their fingers, cross their toes, and hope that nothing stupid happens. Because you see it all the time about like guys get to go to the World Juniors, for example. They get hurt. There goes their season. Like it happened to Kirby Dach, I think 2 years in a row. He went to the World Juniors and got a season-ending injury there. So like my guess is that GMs are not thrilled about what's happening here.
Do you think we see some moves before Four Nations in order to avoid that possibility?
Honestly, I'm surprised there's been as many moves as there have been already. Like the Rangers selling House was, less surprising given their position in the standings, but still, like those are just big names that I'm surprised got moved so early. So I think that Four Nations, I honestly do look at as a tryout, because you look at what happens during the World Cup in European soccer, the biggest players. I mean, as a Real Madrid fan, I remember the bag James got after balling out in Colombia in 2014. I mean, you look at the World Baseball Classic a couple years ago in baseball, same kind of thing. A bunch of guys got minor league deals, contract extensions, major league deals, what have you, coming out of that. And this is just NHL's kind of shortened way to do it. Obviously, I hope no one gets hurt. But again, these are also some of the best players in the league. Like it's not like every one of these guys are just up for trades. So, but you look at the guys on Finland, maybe from the Sharks, as players that could have, teams like any one of the 4 of us in the chat could be looking to make a big move for, with a team like the Sharks, who could certainly handle stacking up on prospects. But I think I agree with you, Jay. I really don't see a lot of players in the Four Nations that you'd be likely to move, because most of the players in the Four Nations are the best handful of players on their guys' team. Like,
right.
I look at the guys on the Lightning, just in my own bias, I think there'd be a riot at Amalie Arena if any of those guys were traded. So, I think that's the case for a lot of players there.
One example I can cite from experience, Brock Nelson is on Team USA. Mm-hmm. He's an unrestricted free agent. The Islanders, he's already announced, or his agent has announced, he intends to explore the free agent market this summer. So the Islanders are probably going to have to trade him away or lose him for nothing. I mean, if I'm Lou Lamoriello, I say either he gets traded before Four Nations, or I tell him you can't compete in Four Nations, because again, using the Islanders as an example, John Tavares, I think it was about 10 years ago, went to the Winter Olympics, got injured, missed the rest of the season. Islanders missed the playoffs that year. If something like that happened, now I'm assuming Four Nations is not going to be the most physical tournament that we've seen, but even just changing direction on your skates can cause an injury. So, do you want to risk that?
Not if I'm a team that's fighting for the playoffs. And like, to go back to that a little bit, like the Blue Jackets are in a really different situation, I think, to, for example, the Islanders, to Ottawa. No one expected this. Mm-hmm. They are playing with the most house money of any team in the league, I think. So it is very much a case of like at the beginning of the season, I kind of looked at the guys and had penciled in. I was like, right, okay, well, Provorov's gone. Sean Corrali is gone. Like, there's a world where they trade Boone Jenner at the deadline for, a haul, because he's exactly the kind of player that teams would love to pick up for a playoff run. So I penciled all of these guys in as like being on the move. And now they're in a playoff spot, or I think they're a point out of the playoff spot as of the time of recording this. The Bruins just won and knocked the Blue Jackets out of the second wildcard spot. But like, this team wasn't supposed to be good this year. Do they buy at the deadline? Do they send picks and prospects away for a team that was never supposed to make the playoffs? Or do they hold firm with their plan? Do they sell at the deadline? Or do they risk getting nothing for, especially a guy like Ivan Provorov, who, for my money, is, I think, the biggest ticket agent for teams to pick up at the deadline.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. And, it's going to keep a lot of people engaged for the next couple of months until the trade deadline. We've got more to get to here on this NHL Squadcast. The Vancouver Canucks, there have been so many trade rumors. Are they ever going to pull the trigger, or will they self-destruct first? We'll talk about that and more coming up on this NHL Squadcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate with a variety of bets that keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. And hockey fans, you can find some exciting betting opportunities on FanDuel for hockey and for your favorite team, so check out the latest odds. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So the Vancouver Canucks, they can't get along. They can't win consistently. The talent is there. The results are not. Rumors keep heating up. The general manager is shopping players, listening to offers. Who do you think goes first, if anybody? And when do you think we see a move? Because the season is kind of slipping away right now from the Canucks.
I mean, you go back to the Four Nations, because if I'm not mistaken, Elias Petterson is on Team Sweden. I had to think about that for a second. JT Miller is not on Team USA, or is he? I should know this, but I'm a noted Four Nations hater and have not been paying attention. But again, it goes back to like, do you trade them before the tournament? Do you hope that the tournament raises their trade value because they'll be playing presumably with teammates that they're not in a fight with? And it goes back to kind of what you guys talked about last week, Gil and Josh, about like, we need to put these guys just in like a get along shirt, and tell them to get over it. You are adults. I work with plenty of people I don't like, and I am still civil with them,
Yeah, we're all in this squad show right now. That's living proof. No, I'm just kidding.
I would never. But my point stands of just grow up. Like, I do, as an outsider, think it is hilarious, and I'm also fascinated about what happened. Like, this is one of those things that I guess we'll never know the truth of, in the same way that, like, I don't think we'll ever know what happened with Corey Perry in Chicago. We're never going to find out what's gone on with this rift, and it is going to be one of those things that, like, is going to haunt me a little bit, because I am dying to know what is going on in that room. I do think that Miller goes. I think Pettersson stays. I think it'd be crazy to do anything else. And I know that Pettersson has spoken out and said, I want to stay in Vancouver. And quite frankly, I think that Pettersson is the better player.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem with Pettersson being the better player there is he's also the better trade chip. I mean, he's 5 years younger than JT Miller. And I mean, I don't know the full contract details of either of them, but regardless, even if they have the same contract, which I'm assuming they don't.
No, Pettersson is making a fair amount more. I don't have exact numbers.
Yeah.
I'm pulling it up right now.
His clauses don't kick in until next year. So if you're going to trade Pettersson, this is the time to do it before July 1.
Yeah. Right. So Pettersson is making 11.6 million until 2032.
Mm-hmm.
JT Miller is making 8 million until 2030, but his no move clause has already kicked in. So you're gonna have to retain on both of these salaries.
Oh yeah.
I feel like
this is just. I think this is why. I mean, just hearing you saying these salaries, Jay, makes it very clear why the Canucks have stood pat right now, because this is just a tangled spider web that I don't think anyone in that front office has any clue how to unweave. And because it's two talented players. JT Miller won a Stanley Cup and was part of another Stanley Cup team a couple years prior to that. I mean, these are two guys that have had a lot of success in this league. And, especially with Pettersson, I feel like that's the centerpiece of your franchise almost. I mean, offense, obviously it's Quinn Hughes on defense, but then it's Pettersson on offense. Like these are franchise cornerstones potentially that you're talking about. But that no move clause with Miller certainly makes things a bit more complicated, because I'm sure the Canucks had not started thinking about moving Elias Pettersson before a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think of different situations that JT Miller has been in. I mean, when the Rangers were kind of reeling when he was there, I mean, that he was a trade piece that was used. And I mean, for Miller, like you guys said, he is the older of the guys, and he has control here. And every phone call that from what they're reporting is saying that Braden Schneider is not on the table for a trade for the Rangers. One of them that they would send the other way if it were the New York Rangers would be a guy like Filipino. But other teams that are in it are the Wild, Stars, and Hurricanes. With as someone whose team is in the Eastern Conference, and I would be scared to see JT Miller on the Carolina Hurricanes in a Rod Brindamore system.
Yeah,
as a guy who's tough-nosed already, and that goes all the way down to his players, especially if you have a healthy Andrei Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho there, and with all the season that Marty Necas is already having there for Carolina. That would be one scary trade for if JT Miller were to end up on the Carolina Hurricanes there. So that is at least my opinion on that one.
And they're going to want to trade him to the Eastern Conference if they can help it. I mean, they don't want to have to compete against him. Right. You got to figure this, though. The Canucks are in win now mode. I mean, This is a team that, they're not building for 2-3 years down the road. So, what benefits them most right now? What are they looking to get back, do you think?
I mean, you'd want for my money, you'd want a roster player back. Yeah. You'd want to do the traders 1-for-1.
And somebody who can fill the role of JT Miller or come close to filling the role of JT Miller.
Because the problem with trading JT Miller is that you no longer have JT Miller.
Right. It's addition by subtraction almost.
Yeah. And if you get I had this kind of not the same situation, obviously, but with the David Jiricek trade, a lot of people were like, well, we'll give you this B prospect and this C prospect and then a second and a third and a fourth. That's more than enough for, a blue chip defensive prospect. And no, that's just you add all of those pieces up and sure, they might add up to make the value of one player. But if they trade JT Miller for I don't know. So I can't think of a trade off the top of my head, but if you trade JT Miller for a bottom 6 player and an AHL prospect and a second round pick, that might add up to JT Miller value, but you're not going to get JT Miller value out of any of those pieces, And
it's not going to help the Canucks win now.
Exactly.
And here's the thing. One of the Canucks' biggest issues is depth on the blue line, which Quinn Hughes is almost playing 30 minutes a game, along with their injuries in goal. You would want a defenseman back in the trade as well to at least help.
Here's a fun, insane thought that won't happen. JT Miller for Erik Karlsson 1-for-1.
Ooh, the money would be close.
The money would be pretty close. Karlsson's deal is up, I think, this summer or next summer.
So
But I think that would be, it's not likely to happen. I think it's a really stupid trade idea, but I do think it would be, as someone who has to, pay attention to the Penguins, I think it'd be really funny. So the other one I've seen is Simon Nemec and Dawson Mercer for JT Miller for the Devils, which I think the Devils would be insane to do, but does get a little bit closer to like actual value if you're not going to do like a 1-for-1 roster player,
Yeah, and with Simon Nemec, I mean the story about his quote the other day is a little bit lost in translation about what he actually said versus what it was interpreted there. And with how Kovacevic has developed in New Jersey and being a big part of that blue line for it, there might be questions on him going the other way for the New Jersey Devils. So that's
if I'm New Jersey, I'm laughing down the phone and hanging up if they ask for a guy like Simon Nemec. Like,
probably,
unless you're giving something like huge in return. That just again, that's not a trade that you win. That's a trade that Vancouver wins quite handily. I know that Nemec has kind of struggled a little bit this season, but that's still an extremely good young defenseman under team control for at least another 2 seasons, I believe, and is far and away the best player on that AHL team right now. So the real answer here is that no one's going to win the Miller trade.
It's going to be hard for Vancouver to win it. I would think it'd be tough for Vancouver to win it only because they are forced to make a deal.
Right. So, and like the GMs can just basically be like, so I'll give you whatever I want. You can decide whether you want that or not. You can decide whether it's good enough. It's the Patrick Laine trade.
Yep. Basically. All right, guys, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Armando, Jay, Josh, thank you so much. We will be back next week with another Squad Show episode. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Gil Martin. Have a great week, everybody, and thanks for listening and watching the NHL Squadcast.